Hello, good afternoon and welcome. My name is Andrew Harvey. I'm the CEO of VMA Group. It has turned 12 o'clock, so I'm hoping some of you are now online and able to hear. As is customary, we're just letting people onto the call now so I can see the numbers are building. So I'm going to talk very slowly just to begin with, just whilst we allow everyone to join the call. But I say, my name is Andrew Harvey. I'm the CEO of VMA Group, and I'm delighted to be joined by my wonderful colleagues this afternoon, Mr. Gabriel Charles and Mr. Jack Pascoe. Give us a wave, guys. Try not to look too serious. There we go. There we go. So we are delighted to be with you this afternoon to share some insight and talk about our latest piece of research, our hiring and salary guides. So we've got quite a lot of people that have joined or signed up for the call this afternoon, which is not unsurprising given the challenges of the market that we're seeing at the moment. Actually, we've got people joining from across the UK and internationally, as we are an international recruitment and search firm. So perhaps maybe check into the comments where you are dialing in from. It'd be interesting to see which part of the country or which part of the world people are dialing in from. So yeah, as I say, we're just starting to see people coming now, and I will kick off proper in a few seconds. As I say, looking forward to discussing what is our recently launched hiring and salary guide with you this afternoon, and also in addition to that, sharing some of our own insight with you too as part of this webinar. And we're also very happy to answer any questions that you might have, or at the very least, we will attempt to answer any questions that you might have. So again, as is usual, I'm sure you've all done this before. If you do have a question, pop them into the Q&A box, as it were, and we'll try our best to answer those questions at the end of our little presentation. As I say, we're going to talk about the hiring guide itself, but we're also going to share some of our personal insights and experience, and hopefully our experience and our backgrounds and the research we've produced will all add up into providing a helpful and genuine market update for everyone joining this afternoon. And just to be absolutely upfront, we are not here to sell to you. We are not here to sell to you. We are simply going to give you a very honest overview of the market as we see it today. So just looking at the numbers there, I can see we've got quite a few people now joining us, which is really great to see. And we've got people dropping in from all over the country. Good to see Hertfordshire, Essex, London, Berkshire, Paris. So all sorts of different places. So thank you very much for joining us. So just by way of introduction again, now that we've got a lot more people on the call, I say my name is Andrew Harvey and I am the CEO of VMA Group. Just to provide you some reassurance in terms of my background, I actually started my career in marketing. So 25 years ago, graduated from university, worked in financial services marketing only for about 5 years, studied with the Chartered Institute of Marketing for 3 years. And actually I've spent the last 20 years now working in the marketing and comms recruitment and exec search space, both for organizations and clients in the UK and internationally as well. So hopefully some useful insight that I can share with you this afternoon. But I say, joined by my colleagues who have equally some interesting experience. Gabriel, why don't you introduce yourself and share your background for everyone that's listening?
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabriel, and I sit on the senior marketing desk here at VMA Group. And I predominantly work across sector. Prior to my 3-year tenure at VMA Group, I spent 15 years in marketing myself, where I led on digital acquisition for a number of the UK's leading retailers, more towards the luxury end in some cases, namely Selfridges, Marks & Spencer, John Lewis, Debenhams when they were more of a force, Lululemon, and many, many others to boot.
Fantastic, Gabriel. And Jack.
Yes, good afternoon all. So yeah, Jack, I sit on the marketing desk working on permanent and interim hires. My background, I used to live out in sunny UAE, now here in London. Obviously a little bit grey and miserable, but still loving it, feeling very at home with VMA Group. I used to run a small boutique digital agency in Shoreditch, and then post-pandemic moved across to VMA Group.
There you go. And as you see in real life, Jack does actually smile. In the picture we've got of Jack, he looks very serious. He's on a very serious day, but he is smiling today. So anyway, that is us. And I say, hopefully our backgrounds, and we're providing you with our backgrounds actually again to provide that kind of reassurance, hopefully that builds into the comments that we'll share with you this afternoon. So I think we've now got probably most of the people on the call that we were hoping to join us, so we'll kick off and get stuck in. I say, if you want to connect with us, please do connect with us after the presentation. Connect with us on LinkedIn. It'd be great to be able to help you if you're looking for a job or looking to recruit for your team or whatever it may be. If we can provide some advice and guidance, we'd love to be able to do that. In terms of VMA Group, just very, very briefly, we are, as I say, an international recruitment and executive search firm, very much focusing on the world of marketing, communications, digital, and change. As we see it, there's a lot of overlaps there, as you'll all be familiar with, but that's very much what we do. We've been around for a long old time, actually. We've been around for 45 years. In fact, last year was our 45th anniversary, so we're probably nearing 46, actually. So we've been trusted in the market for a very long time in terms of the service that we provide. And we do have offices, across the UK, and we do have offices in Europe. But as I said earlier at the top of the call, we are recruiting internationally in America, in Berlin at the moment, in Dubai, and all sorts of different places. And we are what I call a cradle to grave recruiter. So we'll support people at the early part of their career, marketing exec, marketing manager, right through to CMO, and help people build teams. So that's really what we do. In terms of our guide, so actually VMA Group has a strong background in producing research, and you can download our guide by looking at the little link that I think you'll see on the next slide. There you go. So you can download the guide there, or you can go to our website. And on our website, you'll find a little drop-down header. It talks about research, and not only can you find this guide there, but you'll also be able to find all sorts of research that VMA Group has published over the last few years, and some really interesting blogs as well. So if you're looking for updates and pieces of research on certain things within the comms and marketing industry, you'll be able to find them there. In terms of this guide, so we produced it earlier. Well, we've just launched it, but we conducted the research earlier in the year. Just over 500 people took part in that survey. And we've also added in some thoughts and experiences of our own, and hopefully overall that produces a very useful guide. The guide is broken down into a number of different sections, and we'll be talking about these this afternoon. So we've got hiring trends, we'll talk about that, talent attraction and retention, remuneration, and at the back of the guide, there's quite an extensive salary overview of all sorts of different salaries that you might expect in all sorts of different industries. And again, depending on where you're working or where you might be looking to work in the future, it's quite an interesting reference guide. So please do take a look at that. So let's kick off by talking about hiring trends. So one of the questions that we get asked all the time is, how's the market? We get asked that question on a daily basis. So I thought I'd share some stats with you rather than just talking about sort of personal views. So we'll share some stats to begin with. I'm sure all of you are using LinkedIn. So LinkedIn have produced some research recently which says that the market for marketing jobs is down 50% it was down 50% on 2023 compared to 2022. So that's a real life stat based on the number of marketing vacancies that are being advertised on LinkedIn, 50% down 2023 compared to 2022. So that is a significant drop. And actually, I don't think we've seen a huge amount of improvement just yet. Another piece of research that we've looked at, another big jobs board, is Reed. So I'm sure you've all heard of Reed as well. It advertises thousands of jobs on a monthly basis, and a lot of marketing jobs as well. And actually, that they say the market today, 2024, is about 30% down on pre-COVID levels of 2020. So, not only is the market down on 2022, but it's actually down on 2020 as well, about 30%. If you work in comms or media, it's actually down about 40%. So it's quite a significant drop on where we've been in that post-COVID bounce and where we were pre-COVID as well. How does that translate in terms of VMA Group? Actually, we would say that we are experiencing a similar shape of market. So quite honestly, if you look at the job numbers that VMA Group have worked on between January this year and October this year, compared to last year, we are about 27% down on the number of jobs that we've seen come through from our client base. So again, broadly in line with what the research is telling us from the job boards that we see. But also from a VMA Group perspective, what we've seen is a 36% increase in the number of candidates that have been looking for a job in the same period. So job availability is down 27%. Candidate job seekers is up 36%. So we're seeing a lot more people looking for fewer jobs. Where are we at right now? July and August were incredibly quiet months for VMA Group. August was probably one of the quietest months of VMA Group that we've experienced in the last 10 years. And again, I don't think that's just VMA Group. We see that with our peers as well. And it's been a pretty quiet market for the majority of 2024. And say quieter perhaps than where we were pre-COVID as well. But there's some good news. The job market for September is for VMA Group is 100% up on where it was for August. So we're seeing a lot more opportunities coming through in September, or we did in September, compared to where we were in August. And we're seeing that trend continue into the first week of October as well. Actually, if you look at the next slide, and it's not necessarily in the report, but we have also recently surveyed our client base as to where do we think the market is going to go in the next 12 months. And actually, what our clients are saying to us, and quite a high proportion of those clients, is that they do expect, or there is an appetite to grow their team by 61% of respondents in the next 12 months. So, you know, the downside is that the market is down 30, 40%. But the positive is it's not down 100%, it's not down 80, it's not down 90. There are still opportunities out there, and it looks as if there will be more opportunities coming through. It's just that you're going to have to work pretty hard right now to secure those opportunities, particularly in a busy market. The other point I would say is if you're looking to grow your team, yes, there are more people looking, but that will be spread across a wide variety of different job types. So you've got your SEO experts, your kind of digital marketing managers, or your event managers. So it's not always going to be entirely straightforward to find the people that you want. But, you know, there are definitely people out there looking. So that's what some of the research tells us. It'd be quite interesting to hear from Jack and Gabriel what they're seeing on the ground. So, Gabriel, I'm going to pause for a second and come to you. What are you sort of seeing at the moment? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I'll come on to that in a second. I just want to kind of expand a little bit on some of the market conditions that have led to us being in the situation that we are in terms of job numbers being down. All these things are fairly well documented and have been pretty well covered, and I'm sure most people on the call are aware of them. But just to kind of recap, take you back a little bit to 2022, post-COVID was a real bumpy year for hiring, a bumpy year for recruitment. We saw a lot of people being very excited to be out of their bedrooms, got quite trigger happy on the hiring front. And we saw this most significantly in the sort of tech and online focused companies. So a lot of companies overinvested and thought that the uptick in COVID online usage would continue. And this hasn't necessarily been the case. We've actually seen, kind of to focus on online for a second, we've actually seen that fall back a little bit. And the consequence of that has been that, again, using tech as an example, there have been well-documented tech layoffs over the last 12, 18 months. So that's been one factor. So we're falling back from quite a high year in 2022, and we're continuing to do so. In addition to that, we are continuing to experience a series of macroeconomic headwinds. Again, due to a myriad of factors that you're all very familiar with, no doubt. But namely, these have been, rising inflation, which is now under control, which is a positive. We've seen a real spike in interest and mortgage rates. Again, these are starting to come down in a more sustained way, which is really positive. Cost of living, of course, due to some pretty significant global events which have been out of everyone's control. Hopefully, we will have a calmer year in that regard next year. But all those factors have consequences in a contraction in the marketing job market, I would say. And marketing departments can be less well insulated from some of these economic constraints on businesses, these fiscal constraints, and so they can sometimes be impacted first. And I guess more broadly, there's been an overall lack of, the lack of economic certainty has impacted investment decisions. And the consequence of that, again, has been fewer marketing roles more generally. As we move into 2025 with more governmental and hopefully global stability, we will see some more economic confidence, which will filter through to investment, which will again trickle down into marketing hires. We hope. This is the theory anyway. And the numbers we are seeing, as Andrew just alluded to, are pointing in that direction. But my sense would be that a more sustained uplift, I don't think we will see a more sustained uplift until Q1 in 2025. That would be my honest sense, because we're in early October, we've got the budget at the end of this month. So we're expecting, a fairly buoyant October and November in contrast to where we've been over the last few months. December tends to go quite quiet in recruitment, but then we're all expecting a more sustained uplift in Q1. And I guess just to kind of go back to some of the other economic factors, we've had a change of government. There were a lot of eyes on the new government. And since our new government has come into power, some of their rhetoric has been quite depressing, and it has impacted investment confidence as well. And consumer spending has actually taken a dip since our new government came into power. And it's actually dipped at a faster rate at any time since 2020 and COVID. So we're moving into a period of fiscal tightening, and that's why I'm kind of we're forecasting Q1 is when things will start to settle down a little bit. But more generally, some of the consequences of those factors I've just outlined in terms of kind of hiring trends is that we've seen due to budgets being tighter, etc., we've seen more generally a lower hiring risk appetite, I would say. So a lot of appointments are being made within sector. So companies are going for the safe pair of hands at the moment. So even when we get mandates, when clients say to us that they want candidates out of sector, quite typically the appointment tends to be made within sector. So I think that's something to consider. So play to your strengths if you're looking for a job. Your most recent relevant experience is going to be your best bet for securing your next role. It's not really the market for securing dream jobs. It's kind of it's the market for realism, I would say. And additionally, we've seen a reduction in churn as well, and this is particularly at the senior end. So a lot of employees are holding on to their seats at the moment. There's no real confidence that they're going to secure that significant salary uplift in their next job. And so the consequence of reduced churn has meant that the job merry-go-round hasn't been running as fluidly as potentially it did pre-COVID. So those are some of my views on the market and hiring trends that we're seeing at the moment, really.
Thanks, Gabriel. And again, as I said at the top of the call, hopefully what's interesting about the session we're doing this afternoon is we've got some facts based on research, and obviously we've got some personal insight from us as well, and you've heard that from Gabriel. Jack, you look at different sectors, obviously you're working with different clients, but you do something very similar to Gabriel. Anything else you would add to that?
Well, I think Gabriel's gave an extremely comprehensive overview there. What else can I add to that? I think technology's got a lot to answer for. I think the rise in automation, ChatGPT, has sort of shrunken some content teams. So the volume of roles that we were seeing in those sort of content and copywriter opportunities are fewer and further between. So I think, yeah, that's it with regards to sort of the market update.
Well, I was going to ask, before we move on, you do a fair bit of contract and interim recruitment, Jack.
Yes.
What any differences that you're seeing there that you might share?
Yes. So, yeah, great point, actually. A lot of businesses are sort of having those conversations with us with regards to sort of the economy and the future planning of the business. Are they looking to their 3 to 5 year plans? Not at this moment in time. It seems to be the conversations around interim. Can I get somebody in for sort of 6 months to 12 months to plug a gap, to help get the business to where we need to get to, and then review that at the end of that contract term. So there has been lots of conversations around interim, and we have seen sort of businesses that were maybe sort of having conversations about permanent opportunities, turning that into sort of a fixed term contract or an interim day rate opportunity.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. So we've talked there a little bit about hiring trends. I'll come back and summarize that at the end of the call. But the next thing that we wanted to look at is if organizations are hiring, what skills are they looking for? And I think there's two interesting points here. What skills are organizations currently looking to hire? And I guess the flip side of that is if you are looking for a job or you're looking to develop your career, what are the skills that you should be developing yourself so that you are more employable going forward? And we asked the hiring managers that we have in our network who took part in this research, what skills are they looking for? And these were the top 5 answers that came along. Digital creativity. Jack, you mentioned at the top of the call, you've worked in the digital space, you've run a digital agency in the past. What are your thoughts on these top skills? How are you seeing this manifest itself in the conversations you're having with your clients?
Yeah, I think obviously digital and digital marketing, obviously they're intertwined and have been for some time now, and the landscape's continually changing at a rate faster than ever now. So I think it's paramount. I know I mentioned ChatGPT from a content perspective. I think it's paramount that all marketers at all levels are invested in that. Not that it's going to replace, but it's going to reduce probably headcount from some respects, but also enable businesses to get to where they want to go faster in terms of production of content. But that's not just from copy. It's also from video, audio as well. So podcasting, blurbs, scripting. And then into the automation side of things from emailing and account-based marketing, so leveraging CRM. So what we're seeing is our clients, when we're having these briefs and conversations with them, that they are looking for people that have knowledge, experience, and can demonstrate good practical skill set, using Salesforce or HubSpot, just to name some big CRMs, but also with sort of MailChimp on the automation side of things. And then leading into that creativity, leveraging technology like Canva. Again, it's not new to a lot of people, but again, it's quite easy to upskill in these sectors to be able to sort of set you apart from other candidates.
Yeah, and in addition to the point of creativity, I would just sort of add that in a world of universally available and adopted AI tools, and hyper competitive and commoditized markets, true creativity is valued more highly than ever. It's really important to obviously stand out from the crowd, and candidates who could demonstrate that true creativity in their previous career or previous roles will always have an edge, I would suggest, again, depending on the role type. And then moving on to data and analysis. So you will all know this on the call, but since the advent of Google in 1998, marketers and advertisers have an increasingly bewildering array of data sets. Determining how to use those data sets in order to gain a competitive advantage is more critical than ever. Okay. Marketing channel mixes are more convoluted than ever. The interplay between online and offline. A lot of marketers, advertisers have been grappling with this over the last few years. That's not going anywhere. So data and analytical skills are critical. Candidates who can take those kind of complex data and analytical skill sets, outputs, and then communicate them effectively, both to internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, and the audience that they're marketing to. Candidates, employees who could do that are very, very highly prized, very highly prized. It's that juxtaposition between the technical mindset and the ability to communicate clearly, take stakeholders, etc., on a journey. That's really important. And more broadly, communication skills. I imagine they would have appeared on every hiring survey for the last 20 years. They're not going anywhere fundamentally. Employees always highly value communication skills. And then finally, broad channel expertise. So we are seeing an increase in companies looking for candidates with a broader channel expertise. This is partly due to some companies having tighter budgets, so looking to reduce headcount by hiring one person who's potentially a jack of all trades or a generalist. And additionally, with more sort of channels and marketing tactics available than ever before, having candidates who can, who have that adaptability, who have that range of skill sets, we're seeing those candidates quite highly prized by companies at the moment. I mean, that said, there's always going to be a place for the specialist. Larger companies would obviously have, defined teams in terms of channel specialism. So it's not to sort of say that there's less demand for that, but as our survey has shown, that we've seen more of a rise in the requirements for broad channel expertise, I would say, over the last few years.
Okay, thanks both. So we've talked about the demand for hiring. We've talked about the skills that organizations are looking for and perhaps skills that people need to develop. I guess one of the key questions that we also get is a question about salary. What am I going to be paid? How are salaries developing in this market that we're in? So as you can see, we've asked some questions here about a remuneration. And when you kind of add up some of these stats, I mean, on the whole, I would say that the remuneration situation is probably more positive than where the market looks generally. So, circa what, sort of 74%, if you add some of those numbers together, seem to be happy or satisfied with the salaries that they're being paid, and only sort of 26% there are, unhappy or very unhappy with the money that they are being paid. So on the whole, people seem to be relatively comfortable with their salaries, and people feel confident that they will experience salary growth over the next 12 months as well. And I think if you had some personal experience of that, I think, where people are employed, people are telling us that they are getting salary increases, maybe not at the level they might like, although some are, but some are not. But there are still salary increases happening across multiple sectors. So I think the salary side is a good place. Obviously, one of the other factors that plays into remuneration is not just the basic salary, but also the bonus as well. I think certainly my advice is when you're looking at a job opportunity these days, don't just ask what the salary is, ask what the full remuneration package is, because it can make a big difference. And you'll see that here, 50% of people, which is, pretty good, really, again, for this market, are still receiving a bonus, and where they get one, 60% seem to be happy with the bonus they're receiving. So again, I think, that is positive. That is a positive picture, I would say, considering the market. Yes, it'd be great if, 60 or 70% were receiving a bonus, but I think still, in terms of where we are, I think 50% and 60% being happy with that, I think is a good place to be. I suppose, the question is, how big a driver is that for people and organisations? Gabriel, just coming to you, what's your thoughts on this in terms of salary? Where's the conversation at for you in terms of being at the coalface, having these conversations?
I mean, in terms of the survey, I mean, salary typically comes out at the top whenever people we survey talk about what's most important for them in a role. With cost of living is high, living costs are very, very high, but obviously particularly in London. And so, candidates are always looking to maximise their salary. In terms of the reality of how that's reflected, it is fundamentally a bit of a buyer's market at the moment, particularly at the particularly at the senior end, but also at the sort of mid to senior end. And so, where companies were able to stretch and flex on salary to secure top talent previously, conversations I have with clients, they typically say the top end of the budget is the top end of their budget, where there may have previously been a bit of wiggle room. And, again, that's a generalistic picture. Obviously, at the senior end, the senior end, companies will continue to have to pay top wedge for top candidates, particularly when we're headhunting. We find that in order to, where there's a lack of confidence in the market, to get a candidate to move, you still have to pay a premium in terms of compensation packages.
Jack, what would you add? What are your thoughts? What are you seeing? I mean, there's not too much more to add. I don't disagree with anything that Gabriel said there. I believe, yeah, I mean, in terms of sort of the salary expectations now, people sort of towards the lower end of the market always looking for a little bit of a jump, but there has been a bit of a correction towards the top end with regards to sort of CMOs and marketing directors for sure.
Okay, just coming off me. Okay, great. So we're talking there a little bit about salary. I guess the question also is again about future demand. One of the things that creates demand and opportunity in a market, or less so, is the question of staff attrition. Are people going to leave? Are people going to stay? And we actually asked our clients, this actually isn't in the report, but we asked our clients separately. Sorry. Actually, this isn't a report. Are you, this is something else I'm getting confused about. Are you looking to move jobs in the next 12 months? And actually, there's a huge number there. 62% are saying yes, 85% are saying that they will in total consider. So that 62 are people that are saying we're definitely moving. Those 23%, that's what we would call passive candidates. So they're not actively looking at LinkedIn every day. But if we were to give them a call and say, hey, we've got this job, it's just down the road, great opportunity, the likelihood is that they would probably be interested. So you've got 85% of people there that are looking for a new role, and I think that is it's a massive number, but it could be one of the drivers that creates opportunity for people. So I guess the following question of that is, why are people looking? And we gave all sorts of options in the research. Why are people looking? Actually, the top three that came out, so they don't all add up to 100% because it was sort of multiple choice. But the top three that came out were more money, learning development, and company culture. And again, quite interesting to see the variety there, particularly company culture. We think company culture is coming more to the fore as a result of this, ever debated conversation of hybrid working and et cetera. So interesting to see the reasons why people are looking to move. Jack, I was going to ask you this question of company culture, hybrid working, getting people in, all that sort of stuff. How is the conversation of company culture, manifesting itself in terms of the conversations that you're having with people?
Yeah, I mean, not to get too much in the weeds of sort of the flexible working situation, but I think at the end of the day, culture means many different things to different people. And again, different generations have different appetites when it comes to their work and their company culture. So that trust, that opportunity to be able to work from home for sort of the older generations is quite important. And then coming down sort of the mid-level managers and the Gen Zs that are looking for sort of their second or third job, culture for them is something completely different. It's, you know, who am I going to be around? Who am I going to learn from? Who's going to be my mentor? How many days are we in the office? So from a candidate perspective, they're sort of asking those questions about, you know, do we go for Thursday afternoon drinks, or do we have, what's the Christmas party like? And understand a little bit more about the shape and the makeup of the team and the people, and obviously learning about where they've been before, and what stories they've got to tell along that interview process. So from a client perspective, being able to demonstrate that company culture, bringing people back into the office and having those important meetings, letting people feel part of something. So it's progressive, so that when they're going out there and talking about the business and the brand, it's a place that they want to stay. And obviously company culture helps retention. It helps keep people within an organization for a lot longer, if they feel valued. And obviously that is all part of the company culture.
Great stuff. Gabriel, what would you add to that?
I would echo that broadly. I would say that I guess, you know, Jack mentioned it, but different age demographics value things differently. And you know, PwC are reporting that, you know, they intake a large volume of graduates every year. Culture is increasingly important as those graduates. And so, yeah, it's a great way for employers to retain staff. And as our survey showed, it's a key reason why people are looking to move on. And just to touch on, there's also on the slide, learning and development opportunities, which came second. This is, I mean, you know, as I mentioned earlier, there's such an array of different channels and tactics available to employees now, or marketers and advertisers. Companies who can provide L&D budgets, get their employees to use those L&D budgets in a very constructive way, they will, you know, they're more likely to retain their top talent. And it's it's a key reason why people are looking to move on, particularly sort of mid-level candidates, constantly looking to upskill themselves to gain that competitive advantage in their careers.
Great. Thanks, Gabriel. Okay, Will. So those are the reasons that people are looking to leave. Again, one of the things we touched on there is flexible working. Don't want to dwell on that too much, but it was part of the survey. It is a constant conversation again that we get asked, and I think the market is changing from that perspective. So it's a huge driver of importance for people, but there's no doubt that that the way that organizations are now operating is changing. Gabriel, what are you seeing in terms of the sort of change in flexible working practices?
So in terms of what we're actually seeing on the ground, we are seeing I would say, a slight shift towards more office attendance. Appreciate this is a bit of a polarizing topic, and it's very subjective in terms of people's perspectives on it. But that is what we're seeing. So where the norm would have been, you know, 2 days of years ago, we are seeing more requirement for 3 or 4 days in the office. Everyone will have seen that Amazon have mandated 5 days. You know, some of the city firms, some of the consultancies are saying 5 days. There's a lot more sort of tracking of employees going on at the moment in terms of ensuring they're moving back to the office. But in terms of what we're actually seeing, it is, I would say, a shift back to more office-based attendance, although I do not think we will get back to a place where we are all going into an office 5 days, which I think is definitely a good thing.
Great. And Jack, what about yourself? How are you seeing this conversation develop?
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to that, personally, I haven't taken on a remote role for a long time. Large portion of our clients are sort of 50% in the office. So that's, you know, 2 days, 1 week, 3 days, another. And then there's a lot with hard lines of 3 days, and then having sort of your Monday and Friday at home. But again, you know, in the legal sector and even in some technology companies that I've been speaking to recently, they're 5 days in the office. So there does, you know, echoing what Gabriel said, there does seem to be a big push towards getting people back into the office. And again, probably that breeds down to the other bits and pieces that we touched upon with regards to culture, getting people in the office and supporting their learning and development.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jack. So I think we're almost getting to the end of the sort of short, sharp overview. Just before we go into questions, I just want to briefly summarize what we've just talked about there, and then we'll open up some questions. We've had some questions through. So in summary, because we've rattled through that relatively quickly, but we wanted it to be a short, sharp update of the market. You know, we are saying the market is 30 to 40% down on where we'd expect a good market to be over the last few years. And that depends pretty much on, you know, marketing, comms, media. There's integration there, but 30, 40% down is where we see it. But the positive is it's not 100% down. It's not 80% down. It's 30% down. There are still opportunities out there for sure. However, we can see that there is about 35% increase in people looking for work compared to previous years. So fewer jobs, more people looking, but opportunity still exists. But 61% of our clients tell us that they will be looking to hire in the next 12 months. So there is optimism in the market for sure. I think it's going in the right direction, albeit, as we've alluded to here in terms of personal views, relatively slowly. Maybe Q1 of next year will be when we really see a pickup. So if you are looking for a new job, don't be entirely disheartened. There are opportunities out there, but you're probably going to have to work quite hard to secure that job offer. A lot of people looking. So use your time wisely. I don't say that in a patronizing way, but we can see that, you know, organizations, clients, they're looking for people that understand digital, they're looking for people that understand AI, all of these sort of things. Use your time wisely, read around the subject, get onto LinkedIn, get onto Google, wherever it may be, spend some time reading about the latest developments in the industry in which you work. That will be good stuff to talk about in the interviews that you will end up being in, and that will be good for you. If you find yourself in an interview, you find yourself getting a job offer, actually salaries are holding pretty steady. Do not feel disheartened that you'll have to take a 50% salary drop in this market. You may have to be a little bit flexible, but if an organization is recruiting a head of marketing today, you know, it'll be very similar to the salary that they were paying a couple of years ago. There may be some flexibility needed, but you're not going to have to take, you know, a 50% pay drop. If you're looking to hire, company culture is really important. It's really important. I think it's a difficult thing to manage. It's an environment that we're in, but thinking about the culture of the business, the culture of the team, and how you bring new people into that and how you manage it is going to be really important for the people that you bring into your team. Terms of culture, that is impacted by hybrid working. The days of asking for a fully flexible 5-day-a-week role seem to be diminishing. If you want that, you might still find it, but there are not a lot of opportunities out there that would suggest that's something easily to be found. So the 5-day-a-week stuff from home is disappearing pretty rapidly. 3-day-a-week is where we're seeing the market going. So on the whole, you know, there's positives. There's still some challenges, but we would say that the market is slowly, and I think that's probably slowly moving in a positive direction, albeit still relatively slowly, but things there to be positive about. So hopefully, I say that short, quick overview of the market has been helpful. We have got some questions here, which I will attempt to put to Gabriel and Jack. So again, it's just I think Gabriel's commented on this. He sort of sees Q1 being the start of an improving market. And the question here is, when do we really see the market improving? I just want to sense check this. Gabriel has said Q1. I think he's probably right. Jack, would you say anything different?
No, honestly, at this moment in time, obviously we've sort of limped through this year. There are some green shoots since the summer, but again, quite quickly we'll be into sort of December. But the conversations that were happening a lot of around sort of setting up for 2025.
And I think that's right. I mean, traditionally, October and November are busy months of the year for recruitment. December can be pretty quiet, mostly because people are off on holiday. January is always sluggish in the first couple of weeks. So I think we've got this window of opportunity now in October and in November. And if we don't see a huge amount of change, then maybe second half of Jan into Feb and beyond. So I think that's our best guess in terms of where we see the market going. Just to come back to a point that we've got a question here, Jack, which I'll put back to you. Do you see any increasing demand quicker in the contract or interim market, perhaps as opposed to the permanent market, or do you think they're pretty much on par?
I think interim at this moment in time, especially leading up to Christmas in the consumer world that we're seeing, I think, and obviously what I'm feeling with the conversations I have with the clients is that if they have a project that they need to get out the door, the interim is the solution. And I know Gabriel's been working on interim short-term contracts as well. So yeah, the appetite for the longer-term permanent play at this moment in time is just a conversation that's been dragging on, whereas we can turn that tide by having those interim chats, the day rates, the fixed-term contracts, 3 to 6 to 12 months to get people in and help the businesses get to where they need to get to. I think the broader challenge is that businesses need to have a greater performance, greater revenue, and how do they do that on a shorter budget, it seems.
Yeah, okay. If you've got some questions, do throw them into the Q&A box, and we've got some in there, but we'll try and add a few more as well. Gabriel, interesting question here, I guess, about industries, just coming back to that. So we've painted a picture of how we see the market broadly. Do you think there is much of a difference between industries, or are we seeing much of a muchness in all of these different industries?
I mean, it's glib, but I would say it's much of a muchness. All different industries are struggling with a different set of factors which are impacting their ability to hire, and their ability to grow in the current market. So, over the last 12 months, we've seen B2B more buoyant than B2C. That's now slowly turning on its head, and we're seeing an uptick in B2C versus B2B. That's very broad. But it is, it's difficult to pin down which sectors are outperforming others at a more sustained level at the moment, due to a lot of the factors that we covered previously.
And what about a question here about different levels of seniority? Just building on that, Gabriel, are we seeing, a difference in demand at the more junior level versus the more senior strategic level?
So the mid-level is more in demand than the senior level. There are fewer jobs at the senior level than there are in the mid-level. This is always the case, but that effect has been magnified now. So there are definitely fewer senior marketing jobs at the moment. I've seen a couple of comments mentioning that. That's down to the factors I mentioned. Budgets being contracted, less churn. That's a really key one. People not moving on from jobs, less churn. And yeah, so I would say that there's a lot of senior people competing for quite a smaller number of jobs at the moment, and that's where it's being most acutely felt, I would say.
Okay, thanks. We've got a question here. I think it's an interesting question, actually. We do get asked this quite often. So there are a lot of people that have been out of work for a sustained period of time. Some people, great people, probably getting close to 12 months now. And the question we've got here is, how is that viewed by employers, or even by recruitment consultants or recruitment agencies? When someone's got a gap on their CV of 6-12 months, how is that viewed by people? For what it's worth, I'll kick off on that. I think it really depends on the person viewing it, in all honesty. Some people are quite narrow-minded, some people are quite open-minded. But I think on the whole, I think people are understanding that the market has been quite challenging for people, and there will be gaps on people's CVs. I certainly think from a recruitment agency perspective, myself, and I'm sure, without putting words in Jack's mouth or Gabriel's mouth, it's not a concern for us because we know where the market is. Understandably, there'll be a narrative behind that gap that's important to be clear about. But I think I wouldn't let that be an issue of concern. If there's anyone out there that's got a gap on their CV and they're worried about that, what's more important is that you're prepped for your interview, that you're reading around the subject, that you're absolutely on form when it comes to that interview. You're being proactive in your job search. Those things are far more important than a gap on your CV. So that would be my view. Obviously, when you're working with a recruitment agency or search agency, we would be having those conversations with our clients. We'll be explaining why there may be a gap on someone's CV, and we'll be able to help you with that conversation. Jack, would you add anything to that? You obviously deal a bit with contracts and people dipping out of contracts and permanent roles and these gaps. What do you think?
I think it comes down to the rapport that you have with the recruiter and then the recruiter with their client. Again, going back a few years, I think with the pandemic as well, it did soften clients' approach with regards to gaps on CVs and just sort of prime them. And then obviously more so recently, it's just a conversation that we can have with our clients. And as I've said before, the rapport building with the recruiter is crucial in that stage to be able to tell your story and explain why that has occurred. Obviously, generally it's economic at this time for the senior end. And I don't think businesses are blind to that for sure.
Okay, thanks. I've got another interesting question here, actually, which I'm going to put to you, Gabriel. And the question is around flexibility, I think, around total remuneration packages. So if you are working with a client on behalf of a candidate, there may be some flexibility on salary, but is there flexibility on total remuneration packages? How does that conversation develop in terms of perhaps holiday, bonus, pension, those sorts of things? I know that you've recently been working directly with some CEOs of organizations as opposed to CMOs. So you'd argue that those CEOs, they either have their hands tied or they don't based on company policy. Do you think there is much flexibility around total remuneration packages? Any comments on that?
I would say that, as per my comments earlier, there is less now than there has been previously. There is always some jiggery pokery that can be done in terms of compensation packages. For example, putting more money into pensions for senior candidates. That could be a more tax effective mechanic for employers. But yeah, there is while companies will always stretch for premium talent, there is less flexibility in terms of overall compensation we are seeing at the moment, I would say. Again, it broadly comes down to it being kind of a bit of a buyer's market at the senior end, I would say.
Okay, great. We've got lots of questions actually coming through, so we'll keep going until we run out of time. But I think they're all really interesting. Jack, just coming back to you on this, I suppose the question is really around client demand and flexibility. So client has written a list of requirements that they want, and they want these top 10 things. You end up speaking to someone who's looking for a job and they've got 7 out of the 10 boxes ticked. In this market, is that still an opportunity for that person? Or are your clients saying, no, I want 10 boxes ticked, 7 isn't enough, I've got an opportunity to choose? How demanding, how much flexibility do you think there might be, and how much can you steer your client where you think appropriate?
I think Gabriel alluded to sector's quite important at the moment. If you've got sector experience, that would definitely stand you in good stead. It seems obviously there is a lot of availability of candidates on the market at this moment in time, so clients can be a bit more picky. But again, I think from us as recruiters, obviously we look to try and speak to everybody. Not always, we can't always, but understanding the value that you can bring. A lot of the businesses that we're working with, they're coming to us with briefs because they need somebody to come in and solve their problems. And it's about obviously us as recruiters to understand how you can come in and plug those gaps. Ultimately, as I said at the top, having sector experience in this moment in time is obviously where clients are going to go to because it's less risk. And yeah, so I think just to answer your question, 8 or 7 out of 10 isn't, for me, isn't going to be too much of a challenge. Any less than that, then potentially, yeah.
Okay, thanks. That's good to know. Gabriel, I'm going to put this one to you. It's an interesting question. So in our research, one of the things of the skills that clients are hiring for is creativity. And I think you talked about true creativity. Can you give us some examples of, I don't know, it's a difficult question perhaps to answer in some ways, but I'm going to throw it at you. When your clients are looking for creativity or true creativity, how would they recognize that? What would true creativity be?
Well, I would say it depends primarily on the role type. Not all roles require true creativity. Creativity is included in this presentation because that's what respondents to our survey said. For brand roles, for example, where creativity is obviously more highly prized, it's a demonstrable track record of delivering creative outputs, really, and having a portfolio of creative projects you worked on previously, campaigns, etc. That can definitely give you a competitive advantage versus the rest of the other candidates looking for the role. In terms of defining what true creativity is, it's a tricky one. It's a sort of semantic point. I would just say it's anything that gives you true, original thought, original ideation that companies can then use to, feed into their overall marketing strategies and grow the bottom line, I'd say.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful. Great stuff. A few more minutes for a few more questions. Jack, here's an interesting one. So, given the market, less jobs, more people looking, are you seeing marketing directors now taking head of roles? And are you seeing head of marketers now taking senior marketing roles? Are people dropping down a level to secure a job? And is that impacting the market, or are those people still holding out for the level, the job title that that they would have been previously?
Great question. It is circumstantial, depending on how keen and eager somebody is to get their next post. There are conversations, people moving, what I would call their sort of salary goalposts, and people aren't wedded to job titles sort of towards the top end as they used to. So maybe to answer your question in a short way, yes, people potentially from a CMO would be looking at marketing director, and maybe marketing directors, I say maybe they are and will be open to sort of head of roles, purely because again, they just want to, get back on the bike, so to speak, and get into a gig that's exciting for them and a good opportunity to, develop and yeah, get their career back turning.
Cool. There is a question here about the use of LinkedIn, I guess. I suppose it's a direct question to recruitment agencies and search agencies such as ourselves. Are we seeing more organizations using LinkedIn themselves rather than trying to or working with recruitment agencies? And that is something that, that is a question that crops up as well. I think it, sort of my view on this is that it has definitely changed. When I started in the marketing comms recruitment market, 20 odd years ago, LinkedIn was only just a thing. I think my first day in recruitment, I'm not even sure LinkedIn was something that people were using. There are definitely now more organizations tapping into it directly. And my view is that it probably depends on the nature of the role. I talk about VMA Group, we are a recruitment role, but we're also, in addition, and it is slightly different, in executive search. We offer an executive search focus as well. And if you're looking for a particular role, a particular skill set in a particular area, you may not find that advertising that on LinkedIn is going to deliver the shortlist you want as an organization. At that point, you are going to use a search firm such as VMA Group to go out into the market and find the person that you want for your team in a particular location, with particular piece of experience in a particular sector. So I think it's definitely something that is more prevalent, organizations using it. Often the bigger organizations, if it's a FTSE 10, FTSE 20, there's a fair chance. That said, it always surprises me, or perhaps it doesn't, that, on a regular basis, we will get calls from clients who are household names, absolute household names, that will still want to use a recruitment firm or search agency to find the right candidates from them. So, it's a sort of it is a mixed bag. And I would say if you're looking for a job, there are a number of channels to market. LinkedIn has to be one of them, but I certainly wouldn't rule out recruitment agencies. I wouldn't rule out your personal network. I wouldn't rule out your ex-boss. I wouldn't rule out chatting to family friends. There are a number of different channels to market to find a role. LinkedIn is definitely is prevalent now than it's ever been, but there are still other channels that are relevant. So hopefully that gives a bit of insight there. The question coming back to Jack and Gabriel around qualifications. So someone here asking, we see adverts, people asking for MBAs, maybe asking for specific master's degrees or whatever it may be. I mean, Jack, what's your view on this? Does having an MBA make a massive difference, or are there other factors that are important or more important?
I think it can set you apart, and I believe it has done in some of the roles that I've been working on recently. What I think it demonstrates is that you're keen to be a forever student of the game, especially in sort of the digital and the marketing sphere. It's always changing. So it does showcase that you are staying on the pulse and you want to develop your skill set and sharpen your toolbox. So yeah, I would say it does add a fair bit of value for sure.
Gabriel, any thoughts on that? It's an interesting question.
I mean, an MBA is an impressive thing. So, that may well be the differentiator at the senior end between securing a role versus a candidate who does not have an MBA. But I would say that at the mid-level, experience is more important. That is what employers are looking for. They will typically say a bachelor's degree or CIM marketing qualification as standard. Their decision may not hinge on that. If you can demonstrate a body of work for potentially a competitor of the company that you're applying for, then you're going to get the nod regardless of qualification. So it's a sort of yes and no answer, really, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it also probably depends on the application process. If I was chatting to one of my clients and they said, "Oh, Andrew, we must have an MBA for this role. We must have a master's degree," I would ask them the question, why? What is it that you're actually looking for? Are you looking for a piece of paper with a qualification on it, or are there certain personality traits or thought processes that you're looking for from the person that you hire? Because actually you may well find those people and they don't have an MBA or they don't have a master's degree or even a bachelor's degree. There's some incredibly successful people out there that don't have those academic qualifications. So I think we'd always be I suppose, explore the thinking of our clients that look for certain qualifications. As Jack said, I'm a massive believer in continued professional development, reading around your subject, networking, staying up to date. There are many ways in which one can learn. It's not always through a formal academic qualification route. So I always kind of advise organizations to be really open-minded to that. But as I say, in this market, it's something that may make people stand out. We've got a couple of minutes left. I just want to pick up on this. I think it's a good question, just building on one before. I'm going to ask this of Gabriel, which will give me time to look through the other questions. So, Gabriel, if someone does drop a level, so let's say they're a marketing director, and in this market they feel the pressure or the need financially to take a head of role. So they were a director, they've dropped down to a head of. Is it going to be more difficult for them to go back up to director, or even jump back up to CMO if they've dropped down in this market and take a lower sort of titled role?
I mean, it's a difficult question. It's a difficult question, Andrew. I find it hugely frustrating personally when a candidate is prepared to do that, a candidate who's so well qualified for the role, and the hiring organisation will typically cite that they're going to be a flight risk for when they get a better offer over the next 12 months. And this is typically the pushback we get when we put forward candidates who are overqualified, too experienced. In terms of whether it would count against them, I think not. I think everyone's got their own story to tell in the current market. People need to pay the mortgage. If you need to go down a step to pay the mortgage, I think that's fine. You can articulate that to a future employer. So I would worry less about that. You've got to do what you've got to do. But I do echo the frustration in terms of some of the people in the comments who have mentioned that it's tough to be turned down for a role that you are eminently qualified for. Yeah. Can I just answer another question I saw?
You certainly can.
If I may, I've seen a couple of comments around, how to get responses to recruiters, how to ensure your CV gets in front of the hiring manager. This is really tricky at the moment. Okay, so I think you mentioned a stat earlier. I think we're up 36% in terms of new candidate registrations at VMA over the last few months. In defence of our fellow recruiters, Jack, I, and the rest of the marketing team, we get swamped with in-mails, emails, calls every week. And we're not always able to go back to all of them. So many apologies if you have, messaged us in the past and we haven't got back to you. My advice would be find out who the recruiters are in your sector. There are, recruiters who do specialize. We have specialisms within VMA as well. And, be persistent. You've got to kiss a lot of frogs as well, which I appreciate is very, very frustrating in the current market. And if you are applying directly for a company, and we touched on this earlier with lots of companies trying to do it themselves at the moment, try and work out who the hiring manager is on LinkedIn. Send them an email directly. Okay, it won't always work, but if you can send the email to the hiring manager directly, also the talent person, that at least forces recruiters or talent people to look at your application. Often, submitting a CV to a talent team can just be like sending it into the ether, and you never hear back. And the reasons for that are typically that the in-house talent person isn't qualified necessarily to assess your CV and your competence for the role. They may be working on a head of marketing role and also a security guard role. So those sorts of talent teams are giving the whole recruitment sector a bad name at the moment. Going via a recruiter is always your best bet. We have a commercial interest in getting you the role and representing you to the best of our ability. So do try and work out who the most relevant recruiters are for you. Get in front of them, keep doing it, keep trying. And I would say that is your best avenue.
Okay, thanks, Gabriel. I'm very mindful that we are shortly going to be at the end of this session, and unfortunately, we are definitely going to run out of time. There's so many questions that have been put to us. It's great to have those questions, but I'm really sorry that we're probably not going to have time to cover them off. I think what we might try and do is take some of those questions, and maybe we can put a blog together or something around those post this session to try and answer those. We'll put that out on our website, and perhaps we can put that out on LinkedIn as well. So I think I'm going to have to draw things to a close here. I'm sure maybe your time is pressing as well. But again, thank you very much for joining in and listening, and absolutely thank you very much for asking questions this afternoon. So we've tried to make it a very quick fire overview of the market, very sort of honest overview as we see it, based on statistics from actual research, and also those personal views that we have based on the personal experience that we're generating as well. So we hope you found it helpful. Say do download the report. You can see there the link. Do have a look at our website. There's some other interesting stuff on there under the research heading as well. Follow us on LinkedIn, connect with us on LinkedIn, and we'll do our best to help and advise whether you're hiring for the team or whether you're looking for a new role as well. We do have an event actually coming up on the 30th of October. It is aimed at marketeers and comms professionals who are considering an interim role or may need to consider an interim role, or perhaps you're already working as an interim and you want to develop your approach a little bit more. It's a free taster session to what is a broader service offered by someone that we work with as a bit of associate, really. There's no financial commitment required if you want to come along for the taster session, and you don't want to sign up to the full program. That's entirely up to you. But if you are available, we still have spaces available, then we may be able to cover off some of these questions. Actually, we probably will do in that session on the 30th. So have a look on our LinkedIn feed, and you'll see that event there. That is it, folks. Rattle through that a million miles an hour. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I wish you a good rest of the day, and hopefully one way or another, we can be in touch at some time soon. Thanks very much for dialing in. Take care.